Welcome back again. In this video, we are going to have a demonstration wherein we are going to create the SQL Server and see what are settings and configuration it has. Uh, on this SQL as in service or SQL as in services, there are three different offering by Microsoft Azure. So you have the offering as SQL Azure databases, where you create the database fully managed by the platform as a service in the SQL Server itself. Uh, Sorry, not on the SQL Server, but in the Azure SQL as a service in itself. We'll check in the demo. And then you have the SQL manage instance, wherein in case of the manage instance, the platform is managed by Microsoft Azure, but you will have the full access to managing basically the the entire database or the server. So basically you don't get the actual you don't get the access to the physical machine where your data is being hosted, but apart from that, everything what you can manage inside your on-premise machine, you same thing you can do that in the SQL manager instance. So if you want, we can have the separate demonstration in future about the SQL manager instance. Please let me know if you need to have the demonstration on the SQL Server managed instance. I'll try to create one for you, but for the objective of this particular course, we are going to discuss only the SQL Server as in database service. Next and the last is on the SQL Server category, SQL as a service category. You have the SQL Server on number of virtual machine. So what do you do is you create a virtual machine which is a type of SQL Server, and while creating a virtual machine you specify this is the virtual machine. On this machine I need the SQL Server which is of this particular version. Let's say I need a virtual machine which is DSV2, and in that particular machine I need to install SQL Server 2016, for example. So that way you get the full access to the virtual machine. You can RDP to that machine. You get the dedicated server as a virtual machine as offering, like it is the on-premise connectivity you get. And then in that machine you can go ahead and set up, create the similar setup what you have in your on-premise. You can have the always on, which you need to configure. So basically the the infrastructure is going to be created by uh, Microsoft Azure. Installation, patching, and the licensing is going to be managed by Microsoft Azure. When you create a SQL Server on a virtual machine, you can bring your own license. By the way, if you already have a license, you can bring your own license to the SQL Server. So I'm on my Azure portal right now. So here what you can do is go to the create resource or search on top of the search panel and search for SQL Server. So why I'm searching for SQL Server, as you can also click on this SQL Server SQL database, but I would like to search the SQL Server. There is a specific reason for that. Let me tell you that as soon as I click on SQL Server, you have this option SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, Azure SQL. So I'll click on that create button, and then once I create, you get this panel which asks you, okay, what do you need to when you say create a SQL Server. Do I need to create a SQL Server as in as a fully managed platform as a service, or I want to go for the SQL managed instance, or I want to go for the SQL Server on machines? So like I said, you can go ahead and create a SQL Server 2019 as a service, free available service. Then you need to basically choose the specific image if you want to create the SQL Server on virtual machine. For here we are going to just create the SQL Server here. So what exactly it is saying here is SQL Server database. So here you have three options. If I click on the drop down, like create a single database, elastic pool, and database server. So what is single database and elastic pool? We'll discuss it. Let's create first of all the empty server without having any database, and then we'll migrate a database later on. So step number one, create a database server itself without having any database. So if you choose this, you would be able to create a SQL server. And as I said, you don't gets charged for creating a server itself, because everything where whatever you are charged for, it's just for the basically and the underneath database which are running on that particular server. Now if I choose the SQL server as a single database, so first thing it will ask me create a server, and then it will say okay, choose the name of the database which will be created inside that particular server. Now next thing is I can say okay, elastic pool, in this case what it will say, create a server, and then it will say okay, create a elastic pool in that server, and then inside the elastic pool I can have the multiple database attached to the elastic pool. We'll discuss that in the later section. So if I go and check the create the database, let me create the choose the option database server. So I click on create, choose the resource group. I am going to choose the Azure fundamental as in resource group, which I'm using it for the demonstration. And now here you need to just provide the name of the server. Let's say Azure accent SQL. Yeah, this is the name of server. So now you can see the name of server, and then you have the domain name which is database.windows.net. Yeah, this is the typical name which so whenever I need to connect to my database using the SQL server, I need to provide this particular namespace, the name of my server database.windows.net. Choose the location, whatever location is specific to you. I'll choose West Europe, and then so depending upon the location basically you are choosing, you would have the different offerings available. So if you are looking for any specific offering, I would highly recommend you to choose that particular location. So admin is the name which is basically reserved. So I'm not going to choose the administration, it will not allow you. So basically I'm just creating this administrator as in record, strong password, create. So my Mac has basically offered me a strong password for my SQL server, so I'm going to choose that one for this instance. So it might take a couple of minutes to create the SQL server. Meanwhile, I'll pause the video and then switch it back once the SQL server is ready. So the SQL server is created now, and here is the dashboard of the SQL server, which it says that okay, at the moment you have the source group and the database status or the server status is available, name of my subscription, name of the server. I can always copy this and then configure the SQL server. Here I can configure the Active Directory administration. So instead of managing the standalone administrator user or the user management which you create typically on the SQL server, what you can do is you can bring in the Active Directory user group and users and groups here in the SQL server. So you can configure the SQL Server Active Directory here, and what you can do here is you can say okay, uh, this is the SQL Server which is going to be this is the so instead of basically assigning a single user as an administrator, you can assign with the help of Active Directory configuration, you can assign a group of user. You can assign a specific Active Directory group. So whichever user is going to be a part of that particular group, they will be act as an administrator. Okay, I hope this makes sense. So this way it is slightly different from the standalone SQL Server, where you can assign the entire group. Now you have the Active Directory administrator configuration, the advanced data and security protections. So all of the things you can do that, and you can see that at the moment I do not have anything configured. So automatic tuning is configured, managed service management key is configured, but the failover group is not been configured. Yeah, and this is what the server has been created. And now if I go to the there's few more settings, failure groups. I can add a failover group here, and then name of the server I can say okay, instead of the West Europe I can go ahead and create new server, or I can add the existing server. And then failover retention policies I can say manual or automatic, and then I create the failover groups basically directly from here. So let me go back to the SQL Server. Now manage backup, I can configure the backups as well, long-term retention backup. So I can always go ahead and create the backup. We'll look at that, the backup scenario as well in the demonstration. Here on the database side I can attach the database, and whatever database has been attached to the server, which those lists will be available here. So I'm a bit surprised the add button is not available, but you can always go ahead and create the database directly from here, or you can create the elastic pool directly from the overview section basically. Yeah, if you want you can import the database, you can reset password and all those things. This is the elastic pool. So like, as at the time of creating the SQL Server you have the option to create the single database. And so basically when you create a single database you choose the specific tier. So uh, based on the specific tier, the SQL Server performance is measured based on the uh, its compute tier, the IO operations, and the 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 hardware performance basically. So based on that, it Microsoft Azure provides the different service tier offerings. For example, S1, S2, S3 in the standard, and then it goes to the premium tier, uh, basic, standard, and premium. And then premium you have the P1 to P15, something like that. So based on the your performance need, you can choose the different of service offerings. And let's say if you have the any database which has been deleted, you can always go ahead and recover the database directly from here, which will be available in the database. And like in this elastic pool, what used to happen is the in the standard tier, or the in the single standalone database, it gives you the offerings to whatever service configuration you choose. It is to the whole configuration is dedicated to a single database, right? So if you have multiple database, then the your SQL Server performance is going to be divided amongst those, and you need to have the different SQL Server offering. The SQL Server you need to choose basically. For example, when you choose a SQL Server database, you choose the inside the database you choose a specific tier, and so the specific tier will offers the specific level of performance. And then if you choose the next database, you know, choose the next database tier, database performance tier basically. So whereas now if I have a demand, let's say I have 5 different application database. One is them is running very low, another one is running high, and the database which is running low, it runs higher on a specific time period. Let's say for in 24 hour, 1 hour, specific 1 hour, when everybody tries to log in, my user database runs very high demand, but rest of the day it remains cooler. So what I can do is, I using with the help of elastic pool, I can buy in certain number of elastic pools or the capacity of my database. Let's say I bought the 1,000 database capacity, or database, not 1,000 number of database, but this 1,000 number of uh, elastic pools as a power tool to run my databases. And then I can say okay, use this 1,000 database to run the 5 number of database. So SQL Server, Elastic Pool manages for you for running distributing the powers of your the Elastic Pool powers amongst the different databases for you. We'll discuss it now further when we go to the Elastic Pool section. But this is how the server it is right now. So if I go to the any of my SQL Server where I have the SSMS installed, I can always go ahead and connect to the basically connect to this particular server. This was the demonstration how do you create a SQL server, and next now what we are going to look at is we are going to look at how do you uh, the add the database or import a database onto this server. So one way to import the server the database, I can go ahead and create new database. So for example, from here you provide the name of the database here and it will create a database. For example, I'll say Elastic Pool, and then here it is asking, do you want to add this particular database to the Elastic Pool? If I say yes, then it will say okay, choose Elastic Pool, which I haven't created. So let's say if I have the Elastic Pool already created, then I would have the option to attach a database to the Elastic Pool. So as I mentioned in my example, let's say I have 5 database which is distributed against 1000 EDTUs. Now I'm creating 6 one, so I can attach to the 6 database to the same Elastic Pool, or I can create a next another Elastic Pool for this new database as well. So at the moment, let's say I say no, I don't need the Elastic Pool, and as I mentioned that the server itself doesn't cost you anything. Now the costing goes to the database, and that's why when you create a server, it didn't ask you to choose any specific tier, which specific tier of server you want to choose. Now when you create a database, and then it says okay, you are creating a database. Now you choose which service offering you want to choose for your database, and here is the list of configuration you can go ahead and choose. For example, hey, looking for basic or standard, here are the basic database can go up to maximum database size go up to 2 GB of database, and then it goes to 100. Standard goes to 250 GB of database. And then let's say this is about the sizing of the database, but if you want to go to the calculate then EDTUs, then I can go ahead and choose the up maximum up to 3000 EDTUs I can attach to this particular SQL server. Yeah. Now when you go to the premium option, you have the option for choosing the up to 1 TB of SQL Server database. And then if you go to the beyond premium, there are some other offerings such as in general purpose offering, which gives you the standalone offering for, let's say, number of core, how many number of core you want to choose. Then you can go ahead and choose the number of core, and it can go up to, let's say, this much of performance, or you can store 4 TB of data with 80 cores of server, and then this will cost you approximately this much of money. Yeah. So this is how you can configure, and then you have some other option, hyperscale, and then again within the general purpose you have the general purpose 5, but if you want you can configure the other series as well. And this list is keep on expanding or changing day by day as and when the configuration was started. So if you look at some of the older videos available on some of the other portal or YouTube, that you might find that the initially the database was offered only for, let's say, few hundred GBs, not closer to the 1 TB. But now if you look at the different offerings which is related to general purpose or business critical, you would have the option to choose basically choose the database up to let's go to the up to 4 TB of database. Yeah. And so single database or multiple database you can store or host inside the general purpose storage, and then you create the different database offerings here. So let's create a database as in this level, and then once I create the database, apply, or let me uh, choose another one, because anyways we are going to group. Yeah, at the moment let's create the basic one for now. I click on create, review, add, and this is what I need to pay basically, 3.7272 GB, to pound basically, GBP. So this, once I check that the database should be available soon, it's on progress, but once the database is there, as you can see, the database at the moment I've created a standalone database, so I will be getting paid by paid onto this particular database monthly basis up to £3 for storing the 2 GB of capacity and the SQL Server, which is cool, right? The database is successfully created and I have the database which is available. Let me show you, which was just now it was created, so I'll show you. Go to the resource and this is where the database is. So this is my database. The name of the database is test, which I have just now created, and if I go to the server I should have the database available. Yep, which is online. So now next time if I'm going to create elastic pool, then anytime I can go ahead and attach this database to the elastic pool. I hope this makes sense. That's it about this particular demonstration, and then in the next demo we are going to look at the elastic pool.